Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is George Ortega, and I'm here to talk about happiness, because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about happiness as the highest good. And this is an idea that actually goes back to the Greeks. Aristotle was the first to really state it. He mentioned it in a book about happiness called Nicomachean Ethics. Before we get into that, though, I think we should briefly go into a bit about what actually goodness is. Goodness is really one of the most difficult topics in philosophy. I was talking to a philosophy major a couple of days ago, and, well, you know, we have the basic definitions that we find in a dictionary, like that good is what is virtuous, or what is moral, what is ethical, but in general these are synonyms, and we all have a basic understanding of what goodness is, but according to philosophers, one view is that goodness is generally relative to something else. For example, it's a behavior or an action relative to God, or relative to society, or relative to our parents. So in a sense we're trying to please somewhat of an authority figure, a figure that gives us something, and goodness is like we're returning something to that benefactor. Utilitarian philosophy has a definition of goodness, and basically that's they define goodness as what brings happiness. And I think that probably is very close to a more concise definition, because really, as we'll see, goodness is the happiness is the point of goodness, actually. Okay, so let's begin with why happiness is the highest good. Okay, it's really the goal of goodness in general. I mean, goodness, goodness has as its aim happiness. If there were no happiness, there would be no goodness, because generally goodness has as its reward happiness. It's happiness for the individual, happiness for society. It's also for God. For example, God's happiness, in a sense, depends on our obeying His laws, our being good. One, of course, could make the argument that God, being omnipotent and all-powerful, doesn't need us, and perhaps that's logically correct. But nonetheless, the teaching is that God derives happiness through our goodness. Happiness is also the purpose or the goal of the different kinds of specific types of goodness that we have. And that's what I'm going to go through now. There are different qualities that we consider very good, and what I'm going to do now is kind of explain how all of these qualities really have as their purpose, as their main purpose, perhaps their only purpose, happiness. So the first one we want to deal with is love. Okay, naturally, to love or to be loved feels good because it brings happiness, it brings pleasure. Being loved is a very pleasant feeling. Loving is also a very pleasant feeling. Happiness is really why we seek love. We generally expect greater happiness from greater love. Also, when we love someone, really what we're doing is we're caring about that person's happiness. We express our love, and that love is really concerned. It's trying to help that person become happier. And so the person feels it, and that's a very pleasant feeling. It goes the other way around. When we're loved, the person who's loving us is demonstrating their concern for our happiness. And that's what really makes their love so meaningful. Okay, we can talk about compassion and kindness. Again, when we try to help others, whether it's and it doesn't matter how small or large our help is, when we try to help another person, it doesn't matter what way it is. It's always to try to help them to become happier. And this again relates to either individuals or groups of people. And I mean, it's ironic, but sometimes even misguided compassion has as its ultimate goal the happiness of the people that one is trying to help. For example, in the Crusades, we had many Christians that basically, they were actually torturing people to exact confessions so that these people would say that they believed in God and believed certain beliefs. And very ironically, the goal of these crusades, of these acts, were to assure the eternal happiness of these people that are being tortured. So even though sometimes compassion may seem or actually be misguided in certain ways, it generally has as its purpose the happiness of the person we're being compassionate or kind toward. Honesty is another quality. When we're honest, that fosters trust. Honesty is something we hold very dear. And when we have trust, that leads to peace of mind. And when we have peace of mind, that makes it much easier to be happier. I mean, it's a step-by-step sequence. Sometimes it's not a direct approach from one to the goal, but generally, again, the goal is happiness. Again, to respect. When we respect people, we're showing a concern for their happiness. When we disrespect people, that pretty much means that that we don't really care about their happiness. I mean, that's like, that's actually the sting of disrespect. If we're disrespecting someone, they sense it. They sense that, this person does not care about, my feelings, my happiness. So that's why it's always very important to be respectful of each other so that we can enhance each other's happiness. But again, happiness is the goal of respect. Then there's religiosity. Religiosity in general, obeying God. When we obey God, we're rewarded. We're not rewarded just here, through blessings on this earth, but the idea is that by being good, by obeying God, we may also be rewarded in the hereafter, and what may be the eternal life after death. And it's interesting. We are instructed to serve God without a concern for goodness, without a concern for reward. But it's pretty difficult to serve God without also having that in mind. And here are some other aspects of life that ultimately bring happiness. Everything we do when we work is to either preserve and protect the happiness we have, or to make our futures happier. I mean, that's really what work is about. Work is about maintaining or enhancing. Education. A lot of times, the more we know about our world, the more we know about life, the better able we are not just to enjoy it in the present, but also to make it better for the future. So education in general has as its main goal the happiness of not just the person who's being educated, because actually one of the findings in happiness research is that becoming educated won't really affect one's personal happiness too much. But when one gives of oneself through education, one can improve society and the world greatly and enable many people to become much happier. The same is true for medicine. We practice medicine so that we can heal, people, so that we heal illness, and naturally health makes it somewhat easier to be happy. Again, with medicine, it's been demonstrated that that health isn't really so great an influence on our happiness. So a lot of times, when we heal people, when doctors heal people, a lot of time it's to keep us alive for those who love us, for those that if we died we'd leave behind and make possibly very sad. Again, money is, it's interesting. Sometimes there's an expression that money is the root of all evil, but money is also the root of a lot of good. When you have money, you can create things. You can make things better. I mean, money is actually just a means of exchange. It just makes it easier to exchange products and services. But again, the ultimate goal of making money, of buying what money can buy is happiness. We get married to become happier. I mean, this is whatever we do is really for happiness. Government. Now, there's a utilitarian philosophy. I want to get back to that again, and that's that the measure of goodness is really what brings the greatest happiness to the greatest number of people. Okay, so that's an interesting kind of a concept to try to understand. That's really how governments operate. Our government will try to enact legislation and policies and initiatives to really help as many people as possible, ideally. And then we allocate our resources, in order to ensure that end. Hi, you may notice that I'm not wearing a beard anymore, and I've been wearing a different shirt. We haven't entered the Twilight Zone. This is the magic of videotape. I'm going to do a song about goodness now. It's called Good.
Life is only one direction, good. Every thought, every feeling, every action, every plan reaches for the good. Every word, every gesture, every move and every glance reaches for the good. Since the time this world began, there has been a single plan, devotion to be one with ecstasy. Every day it gets more clear, life is getting near to a perfect world of love and harmony. Good. Every person, every flower, every cloud and every star reaches for the good. Every wind, every mountain, every ocean, every sky reaches for the good. Our world will be as one when the final task is done and the perfect dream becomes reality. Then the goodness will abound, everywhere it will be found. Peace and joy will embrace eternity.
Okay, that's actually, that song has to do with the idea. It's kind of like a Greek idea and also a Jewish idea that it's kind of ironic. I alluded to this a bit earlier in the show. Whatever we do, whatever anyone does, regardless of what it is, at the time they're doing it, in their minds, they believe that they're doing the right thing. A lot of times we make mistakes, but it seems like there is like hardwired into us. There's something that's just part of our nature that, in a sense, we can't knowingly do wrong. Even though sometimes we think like, well, some people may believe what we're doing is wrong and all. In our mind, there's always a justification. And so that kind of song, reflects the idea that, well, if our basic drive is toward goodness, then I think, despite mistakes, we're gradually elevating toward higher and higher forms of goodness. Okay, so let's see. What I want to do now is just go through some of the logical consequences that come about from the idea that happiness is actually the highest good. Okay. First, there's the idea of raising children. Okay, we raise children, and we as parents have a responsibility to to teach them what is in their best interest and in the best interest of society. And so that's why they go to school. That's why we teach them right from wrong. That's why we teach them everything. But I think that when you consider that happiness is the highest good, I think while we're teaching them to be good, it just makes a lot of sense to teach them how to become much happier. There are a lot of good kids in the world that sometimes just aren't very happy. And so, it really is part of the obligation, part of the responsibility of being a parent, not just to make sure that the child is good for the sake of the parents so the parents can enjoy them, or for the sake of society so that society can enjoy the benefit of a good person, but also for the sake of the child. And again, if happiness is the highest good, then I think a great deal of attention has to be spent by parents in ensuring that in addition to being honest and hardworking and truthful and other good qualities, that children are happy. It should be the most important kind of goodness that they're taught, actually. So naturally, schools should teach this. Schools should be teaching kids how to be happy, in addition to teaching them the kinds of things that they need to learn to make it in the world, to work and become productive citizens. Our government, naturally, if happiness is the highest good, government is very interested in doing good. In a certain sense, that's what government does. So if we as a people have a government very interested in doing good, then really the highest, the best good that our government could do would be to ensure the happiness of as many people as possible. Also with religions, you find a lot of times religions are very, very dedicated to the ideal and concept of goodness. I mean, ethics, morality, virtue, that's what so much of the Bible is about. That's what so much of biblical tradition is about. However, we have to remember that God created us to be happy. That's the purpose of creation. I mean, He didn't create us to suffer. He didn't create us to not enjoy life. Actually, there's a kind of a belief that when we're unhappy, it's an affront to God. It's like saying to God, "Well, you haven't given me enough. Despite all you've given me, I want more." And so, a lot of times, as an obligation and a duty to God, as part of our religiosity, it's very important to be happy. To basically to thank God, to be appreciative of God's blessings through our making great efforts to be very happy. Okay. Again, another logical consequence of happiness being the highest good relates to business. Business is, we sell each other products and services. I mean, we just as like we're government, we're also business. It's all about people helping each other. And a lot of times we sell each other products and services that indirectly help make us happier. I mean, certainly the food we eat, the clothing, houses, just the many kinds of consumer goods and services that we purchase really always have the implicit and the overall aim of either preserving our happiness or making us happier. So in terms of business, it just makes a lot of sense for business to finally directly approach that goal. As I've shown in two previous shows on happiness increase studies, it's very easy actually in a relatively short amount of time to increase a person's happiness through training, and businesses are in an ideal position to really make money for themselves and benefit many people in society by offering happiness as a product. Happiness isn't just the goal of all other products that are bought and sold. Happiness actually can be sold as a product. Businesses can make us happier, and people can make money doing that. That would be probably the best way to make money, I would imagine. Also, there's the logical consequence of happiness in relation to foreign affairs. Um, I talked about this several weeks ago on a show on happiness in government. I mean, a lot of people in the world are not happy, and in recent times, their unhappiness has actually become a threat to us in terms of terrorism. People are dissatisfied with their lives. A lot of times they blame us, whether they're right or wrong. And it just makes a lot of sense to devote some time and energy to helping people around the world become happier as a form of goodness. I mean, it's the best thing we could do for people. Sure, we have to feed people because, food is so important to happiness. We can't be happy without food. Actually, that's the one thing we can't be happy without. But in general, it just makes a lot of sense to, with our foreign policy, be very good to the world by helping the world become happier. Okay, now there are some personal consequences of this idea that happiness is the highest good. That means that, when we're just barely happy or not happy at all, it really means we're failing at goodness to a great extent. If happiness is the highest good and we're not very happy, that means to a great extent we're not being very good. And I know goodness is very important to us. Goodness is, to many of us, much more important than happiness. I'm not sure that's the way it should be, but that's generally often the way it is. So that's something to keep in mind, that to be a good person, it's necessary to be a happy person. And you have to think that seeking happiness isn't a selfish goal. Sometimes we're taught to think that, well, it's hedonistic, it's something that it's selfish, But as long as our happiness isn't being obtained through the pain or discomfort of others, as long as our happiness isn't at the expense of others, then not only do we have every right, but we have every obligation to be as happy as possible. Regarding others, actually, the best thing we could do for the people around us, whether they're our friends or our family or people we don't know, is to make them happier. If we're making other people happier, we're giving them what they most want, and we're also giving them, we're expressing the highest form of goodness toward them that we can express. It's the highest form of compassion to make a person happier. And then lastly, in a personal sense, happiness or goodness is very important to many of us. And in that sense, it makes a lot of sense to become happier, because many happiness studies have demonstrated that when people become happier, they become better. So a very good way for us to become better in other ways other than happiness, in terms of our, compassion and loyalty, trust, and all the different other qualities of goodness, is to become happier. It'll help us to become better, more ethical people. Okay, sometimes actually though, it's being too being good through evil, of course, is not good. I mentioned this before. Sometimes we have to be very wary to not seek or achieve this highest good through means that aren't good. Probably there's a very cogent reason for this, and that's that there appears to be justice in the world. There appears to be justice in the form of God or nature imposing justice upon us, and there definitely is a justice in terms of laws that we create to help us become better. So again, it's not wise to seek this highest good through ways that aren't good. And also, kind of interestingly, this is also a Jewish belief. It may be Christian and may have other traditions, but the idea is that sometimes it's not, being too good is sometimes unwise. If we try to be too good, too truthful, too whatever it is, sometimes that's maybe as bad, or perhaps almost as bad as not being good enough. And sometimes when we try to be too good, it causes us to be less happy. It's like we're trying too hard. So So that's why a lot of times the rabbis used to say, just be as good as you can. If you try to be too good, it's actually working against goodness in general. One last point I want to make concerns what the implications of happiness as the greatest good means to our world in general. I mentioned earlier that the only condition that prevents happiness is not having enough food, and there are many people in the world that don't have enough food. About, I believe, 1/3 of the population of the Earth doesn't generally get enough food to maintain their daily energy requirements. About 8 million children, I believe under the age of 5, die each year from either direct hunger or the effects of malnutrition. So that's about 23,000 children a day dying, and that's a great tragedy when you consider what happened with the Twin Towers. It's our losing 3,000 people in one day. I mean, we're losing 8 times that many to hunger every day. So I think that in terms of being good to our world, feeding people so they're able, so they're in a sense allowed to be happy is probably the best good that we could do the world. Okay, well, that's all we have time for tonight. Thanks for watching. In the future, we'll explore other topics designed to help us better enjoy life. This is George Ortega saying, be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope you'll join me again next week here on The Happiness Show.
Happiness is powerful. It's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.